Have you ever heard the phrase that I built this house with my own two hands? Well, guess what? This week, I built this house with my own two hands. And I learned a lot, and I'm honestly thinking I should have just 3D printed it. But maybe that's not for everyone, so let's talk about it. Before I bought any miniatures or got into any war games or anything like that, I bought a 3D printer because I thought that would be my gateway in to all of those things. Before I even printed any miniatures, I was looking at 3D printing my own dungeon, the Mines of Phandalin, and people had this like whole thing built out and it was on a table and it was huge and it was amazing. And I thought that is what I want to do with a 3D printer. Since then, I have matured. And now I print things that are versatile and will last and can be used in multiple settings and don't cost me $1 million to get, especially when I can make something for way cheaper and a fraction of the time. And what I mean by that is there are certain things on the tabletop that you can make out of XPS foam or cardboard or any, other things that you can do so quickly. Why would you bother 3D printing it? Especially if you can buy it at a good price and do that. And what I mean by that is like block terrain, and trees. I've made trees before on this channel. I have made paths. I have made all sorts of things to put down on a game board that didn't have to be 3D printed, but at the same time, everything that I have made can be 3D printed. So the big question is, which one do you do? Should you invest your money in a 3D printer, or should you invest your money in the tools needed to build things by hand? Honestly, I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with. 3D printing terrain is super cool in a lot of ways. There's a lot of benefits to doing it. I love having these houses. I have like 4 or 5 of these houses with the tops that come off. They have a couple different versions of the top, but they have like a little door, all sorts of little cool things that go with them. And in all honesty, they don't take a super long time to print. If you do both of them at the same time, you can probably print this in about 10, 12 hours. Okay. And I know that seems like a lot of time, but if you're printing while you're asleep, it's not that big of a deal. And at the end of the day, to build one of these houses, it's about 600 grams of filament. Okay. And there are ways that you can change it. You can modify it. You can be a little bit lower. You can be a little bit higher, depending on what you do, depending on the supports that you use. But in my experience, they're about 600 grams and a roll is 1,000. So you can almost get 2 of these out of 1 roll of filament, and whatever you're paying for filament, that kind of tells you what they're going to cost. I like to say that they're usually around $10 for this. So then the question becomes, is it worth the time and the money to print a little house like this? Okay, this is what I had always done, but I have always seen people making houses by hand. And I recently got my hands on some XPS foam, some hot wire cutter, things like that. And I was just like, I gotta try this. I gotta give this a shot. I'm a relatively creative person. This is gonna be easy. It was not easy, but it wasn't necessarily hard either. I learned a ton from this. And so I'm gonna show you exactly what I did to get from XPS foam to my first homemade from scratch house. So first things first, all I had was this little wire cutter. So I had to cut my XPS down into chunks that were easy to deal with. And that's what I'm doing here. And as you may be noticing, I'm getting pretty close to my hands. If you're going to do something like this, wear some leather gloves, because you'll thank me later, I promise. But I wanted to make bricks, and so I cut the foam I had into thin sheets like this, and then just using some stuff that I'd already 3D printed, some container lids, I propped them up to get the size that I wanted the whole time, just pushing it straight through on that wire cutter. It's crazy how fast it can cut, but if you let it sit for even a second, it's going to start making holes and weird stuff in the foam. So you got to make sure that you keep that pressure on it and get it going through. But then I had the rough dimension that I wanted for my bricks. All that I needed to do now was cut them into brick size. And so I thought maybe I'll just do the whole thing. And then I kind of decided, no, that's not a great idea. Let's separate this out, especially some of the smaller pieces. And I got it to something that was manageable and then just started cutting down. And again, definitely wish I had been wearing some leather gloves because it made it a little harder, and I had to be extra careful to not get close to my fingers while I was doing this because that thing's hot. And so I was able to make 1,000 bricks pretty quick. And I didn't want them to look like clean cut bricks. I wanted them to look like stone that was weathered and damaged. So I just put them in the bag and just roughed them up a little bit. It didn't do a great job, but for what I was doing, I thought it worked really well. I've seen people put rocks in the bags and things like that, and I just decided to do it this way, and it worked pretty good. And I wasn't going to just make it from pure foam and nothing else. So I got a small box from an Amazon package and decided to use that as kind of the template for the house. And I just glued everything with a glue gun and put it into shape. And then I started using these. This is a texture roller. I'll talk about it a little later on. But basically, it's a 3D printed thing. You can buy them online. They're all over the place. That you roll on the foam and it gets a texture. And I thought, this is a really easy way to do a roof. And so that's what I did. I just rolled it out. I used some of the thin pieces that I had left over and cut them into slices, as you can see there, and put them down as a roof. And is it perfect? No. Could it have been done better? Yeah, absolutely. But for what I was starting with, I thought, man, this is kind of cool. Like, I was very impressed with myself. And I wanted to kind of just show you start to finish what a wall looked like. And now, after doing this one wall, because the PVA glue took so long to dry, I actually started using a hot glue gun, which has its own challenges. But if you're not in a rush to film something for a YouTube video, PVA glue works perfect. And you just start placing the bricks where you want them to be. And I feel like I was a little confused whether or not I wanted to do brick or stone. You know, I should have made more square pieces than just all rectangular ones to make it look more real, but you live and you learn. Then once it had all dried, I mixed some glue, some paint, and a little bit of water, and then covered the whole thing to protect it. And that is how I built this bad boy. And I'm actually really proud of how this thing turned out. It's not perfect. It's definitely not perfect. I mean, if you can see from the roof should have been longer. It should have gone over the edges of the brick. You know, the door didn't turn out as well as I had hoped it would. I still need to add like hinges and things like that to make it look really good. But overall, for my first house, this thing's great. It's solid, it's light, it's durable. You know, I've dropped it like 3 or 4 times, and it's a great house. But overall, it took me about 2.5 hours to make from start to finish. Which, if I have 2.5 hours, a lot, that's great. But this is just a basic house. There's nothing too fancy about this. If I want to make a wizard's tower or a drawbridge or a castle or something like that using foam pieces, it's going to take a very long time. Now, is 3D printing going to be faster? No, probably not. Depending on what you build. The thing people don't tell you about 3D printing stuff is that if you want to make something for Necromunda, right? Because that's kind of what I'm doing right now. You can find files that are simple and great. You know, you can find your little hot dog stand with a removable lid and doors and things like that. This is an awesome, easy to print model, and it's free and it's out there. It's great. But if you want to do bridges and railings and all of that stuff for Necromunda, you can find it. You can. But the process of getting it printed is a whole different ballgame because there are hundreds of pieces. And it's not even for something that huge most of the time. It's usually for something relatively small. And there are hundreds of pieces that you have to get. You have to print. It has to print out correctly. It has to work. And for some people, that is worth it. For me, I think it's worth it. I've dealt with 3D printers long enough that I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on them. And I'm okay with the cost. I mean, like I said, this is going to cost you about $10 to make, right? Maybe a little less, maybe a little more. This thing, after buying like the materials and stuff, this cost a couple bucks, maybe. You know, it's really simple and a cheap way to get stuff down on the board. I'm not saying that either way is the better option, but there's probably a better option for you. If you already have the stuff to make these things, stick to it. Keep making them because they're one of a kind. They're individual things. They're awesome. Your table, no one will have a table that looks like it. Whereas if you jump into 3D printing, everywhere you go, you see bits and pieces and things that you've seen before 4 or 5 times. So it's up to you in the long run. I like to do a combination of both. And one of the things that I think is so cool is that you can 3D print things to help. These are texture rollers, okay? And what these are is when you push down and you push the texture into the foam, that's what made this top of this house look like shingles. It was because I rolled this texture roller over it. Okay, and this one is for wood, which you can't see it too much, but on the door, that's what made the door look like wood. And so I think a combination of the two is right where you want to be. But I would love to hear what you think about that. Do you think it's worth just 3D printing everything, or do you make everything by scratch from hand? Black Magic Craft is a YouTuber who makes things by hand, and the stuff he makes is absolutely amazing. But he also thinks that there are some things that are worth 3D printing, while there's other stuff that's totally worth just making in foam because it's so much faster to make in foam. So, I'd be curious to know what you think. Should I stick to just 3D printing? Should I keep making things with my hand? Does it get better? Does it get easier? Do you get faster? And at the end of the day, are you proud of the things that you have made more than the things you've 3D printed? That's what I want to know. Because, sure, I didn't make this, but I painted it, and I feel really good about the paint job. I mean, this one's definitely not done, but some of the other ones that I've finished, I feel really good about how they've turned out. And I feel like I've added my own touch to them, but in the end, they're not mine. They're somebody else's file that I printed and I painted, just like most of the miniatures that I'm printing or painting. Somebody else made them, but I'm adding my 2 cents to it. So, let me know what you think. Let me know if I should keep going doing this, and if there's something you'd like to see. Like I said, I'm making my Necromunda board. It's taking forever, but I'm working on it, and I'll update as things go by and as I make more. And if that interests you at all, please like, subscribe, follow the channel. I'm all about making tabletop gaming as accessible as it can be and as fun as it can be at the same time. So, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. And as always, don't spend so much time building your world, whether that's 3D printing it or building it by brick, that you forget to spend some time in it. Until next time.